what I am. It is. Can somebody tell me, you raise your hand first. I can't read your name then. You want to tell us? Is this okay? Might be wrong.
I think you're like, half of your, like you're maybe like a half Asian.
Okay, I think that was a good thing, right? Did anybody have any other?
Well, it sounds like you're half Asian and like American.
Well, you can't make it into an acronym, it's just that. Technically, the word Hapa is Hawaiian. It's just a mathematical term, it means half. If you want to go to a quarter, there are a couple syllables that you would add. It gets you to a quarter. I don't know what those syllables are. It sort of took on more of a racial valence when the Native Hawaiians come out in Hawaii, had folks coming in from other places, settlers from elsewhere. The term then Hapa came into commonplace usage. You probably, among you, anybody who's connected to Hawaii knows, would use the word haole as, say, the white person, maybe in a not super flattering way, but haole actually means it's without breath. It means foreigner, right? From back then, that was kind of the way these folks were seen as ghosts or without breath. So Hapa came to be kind of like a derisive insult to people who were the inevitable multiracial population that emerged in the Hawaiian Islands with the arrival of non-native Hawaiians, right? But sort of in more current day usage, it has, and I don't know the exact origin of how this started to happen, but people in the Asian American community would start to describe as being Hapa. Right? So that was, as was the folks who answered the question, so generously, we're Canadian. Usually, when you say you're Hapa, you just mean you're half Asian and half something else. We can get back to the language piece of it in a second, but I'm here to talk about the organization Hapa Issues Forum that started here on the UC Berkeley campus in 1992. As I said, I graduated in 99, so I was not here for that genesis, but I can describe it to you. I know the founders of the group. So 3 students at Cal, Greg Maeda, Eric Tate, and Steve Rupp, all Japanese Americans who are here taking a class in Japanese American history, taught by Gary Takahashi, if you might know him, a faculty member here. I think the class is being taught in Grinnell. I want to say the fall of '92. At the end of the course, after covering things like internment and immigration and those kinds of mental topics, they had a debate, and it was to bring in 2 graduate students to debate what is the impact of interracial marriage on the Japanese American community. The 2 speakers were a graduate student named Jin Peng and a graduate student named Cindy Nakashima. So Jin's piece, she went first, and she kind of lambasted the idea that any Japanese American should marry outside of the community, or any Asian American, or really any person of color, because doing so would often be kind of buying into white supremacy or diluting the community's political power, or any other such kind of degradation of community argument. Those 3 students that I mentioned, Greg and Steve, were very upset at this argument because it sort of, in their mind, kind of negated their existence, right? Because their parents had all chosen to marry outside the community, and to make the case that then they were somehow less than as participating members of the Japanese American community was very frustrating to them. Thankfully, the other debater, Cindy Nakashima, who herself was multiracial Japanese American, gave a vigorous defense of the idea that no, we're not necessarily losing community through this socio-cultural dynamic. We can remain strong as a community as long as we recognize other ways that we can continue on Japanese American community activity beyond, say, a more multiracial family.
What year was this?
92.
Oh my God.
So we started, the foundation is December 1992. Those three students, with I think Jerry and Cindy's help, created this group, Hapa Issues Forum, and they, as many student groups do, organize meetings. Eventually, the activities would also, to create community, would be social events as well. So by the time I arrived on campus in '95, there was kind of more of a robust set of activities that I was able to plug into as a student, and eventually would participate as an organizer in the annual Hapa Issues Forum conference, taking place in the spring, and the sort of other tentpole of the fall semester would be the Interracial Dating Forum, which is perhaps maybe a more inclusive kind of event, because it wouldn't focus specifically on being Japanese American, but on anybody who's dating, right? I'm actually wearing a conference t-shirt from '98. The logo on the dash, it could be a winky smiley face. It could also be one Japanese eye, one non-Japanese eye. So I don't know how that goes over these days. I don't know if that plays well or not. The little tagline, if you weren't able to read it, says, "Don't worry, be Hapa." We had a lot of merchandise. It was, you know, you can actually have a lot of fun. There's some serious issues, but you can play with it a little bit. Another piece of merchandise that we churned out were pork chops. So hashi on one side, fork and spoon on the other, flip depending on what you're eating. We had other t-shirts. And in addition to our conferences, social events, meetings, we also did fundraising. So J-Sei's immediate predecessor, Japanese American Services of the East Bay, was a group that used volunteers from HIF to go down to Southern Alameda Buddhist Church to volunteer for bingo night. So we would help them with their bingo. I don't know if anybody's ever been part of bingo night, but that was super fun. As far as the kinds of activities and meetings that we would do, a lot of it was sort of based around more generally cultural identity and experience. Also topics that would sort of relate to the blending of families. So for food, we use the term Hapa Grub. One of our original members actually had a column in our newsletter called Hapa Grub, where he would sort of ruminate on culinary traditions, maybe offer a recipe. The sushi burrito comes to mind as one of the kinds of innovative food products that we would think about, representing our cultural mishmash. We'd have meetings on religion and sort of accommodating a couple of different religions in a household, maybe Buddhist and Christian or Buddhist and Judaism, those kinds of things. Cultural craft nights, where we would have either exploration of crafts, maybe origami or something like that, or we'd have presenters who would kind of showcase the ways in which they express their Japanese heritage through different activities. And then we also would go elsewhere to talk to the community, not just being a university-centered group, but we went to several JCL, Japanese American Citizen League conferences. I went to Fresno to talk to a JCL conference. There was folks who went out to Reno to do the same. JCL actually gave Greg and the HIF founders an award at one of their national conferences in kind of recognition of the work that they were doing. I think back then it was a bit bigger of a deal, a little bit more politically charged as far as, if somebody is not full monoracial Japanese, whether that or not they can participate in community, that was actually a question. I think now, today, for better or for worse, the demographics have tilted so much that it's very difficult to do any kind of activity if you do not have a full spectrum of multiracial.
Well, I got to get it done.
Right? So, in terms of inclusion, at a certain point, as I was participating more in the organization, we started to see an interest in other Asian American communities and joining in this kind of dialogue of who belongs. We would find people who were trying to join the Asian-based sororities and fraternities might get turned away or feel not totally welcome because they were perhaps part white or part something else that the bulk of those fraternities did not represent. There would be other groups like the Filipino-American Club on campus had once. We had a member come and describe her very unfortunate experience trying to join that group and how she was treated there. So HIF did become kind of more of a catch-all for cross-Pan-Asian communities to come in and discuss, what it means to be from different heritages. I graduated in '99. The group continued on. I went to Japan to teach English on the JET program. I returned to the Bay Area in 2005. And I can report that there has been a fair amount of multiracial kind of conversations being organized here. But HIF did sort of dissipate after having kind of sent out chapters and other UCs and schools and actually incorporated a national nonprofit. Eventually we did kind of, for whatever reason, and we can talk about this later, I'm going to wrap up in a minute just so we can move on with our tour, but I'll stick around and go to Future to talk about it if you want. We did sort of, despite having a national nonprofit and even community-based chapters, not even the university chapters, did kind of figure out. And so when I was back here in 2007, I helped organize kind of, we called it a closing ceremony. It was in this building, whereby we displayed our the posters and the kind of visual pieces of our organizational history, and invited speakers to kind of talk about the legacy of the group and so forth. And as I talk, I'm thinking about so many things that I'm leaving out that we did. For example, Peter mentioned Dr. Kaji. He spoke at our 5-year anniversary banquet at Silver Dragon in Chinatown. There's a lot in my head right now. But I guess I'll conclude by saying after that event in 2007, those archives, photos, posters, and such, we displayed them for a few months at NIJAS, the National Japanese American Historical Society in San Francisco, Chinatown. And then they are now occupying the UC Library's storage facility in Richmond, which is 2 batches. They're very nice. I have a picture in the little binder that's going around. It's not very easy to see, kind of see the display that we had there. And so that's sort of, I guess because of where we are now as a community, I think the pressing need for some advocacy for those of a mixed race, I think is diminished. And I think that's probably a good thing. I coach in both the basketball and the Japanese basketball league, youth leagues here, or I did. I just started a baseball team of Japanese American baseball players. That's where the hat comes from today. And that team that I have now, I think I have 14 players. I got maybe 4 fully Japanese ones, right? These are middle school students. So like, if you're going to do something in the community, you're out of luck unless you're bringing in some mixed folks, right? That's kind of the way it is, for better or for worse. I've come back several times here to talk to students or to hold workshops on behalf of different organizations. And the one thing that the 2 things I usually used to talk about as kind of like the things to leave people with, because I don't want to talk just about history, but also think about the future. The 2 things that I used to talk about were marriage equality for queer marriage, right? And bone marrow donation. So we've now legalized gay marriage, so that one is less pressing, right? And the reason that I would push on that is because in the 60s, as you may know, people of different races could not marry legally in the United States, right? So as mixed race people, it was sort of on us to help others who are able to marry to have that, to enjoy that right too, right? This is the connection that I'm trying to make there. And then as far as the bone marrow donation, people who are of multiracial ancestry are less represented or have been historically less represented in the National Bone Marrow Registry. So if you have cancer or a blood disorder and you need a transplant, your chances of getting one from that registry are lower. And so what we would do is to make sure that if you are mixed, you register in that registry so that when people are looking for matches, you might come up and you might then donate your marrow to save a life. Which also is, thankfully, not quite as pressing a need now. I think in part because of awareness and also because medicine has taken some advancements and made it other treatments possible. But it's still an issue, and you can look it up national, I think it's meant to be branded, but I used to be the National Bone Marrow Donor Program online. As far as what the issues are for mixed-race folks and for our community within that kind of dynamic, I don't actually know. If you have thoughts, I'd be curious to talk to you afterwards, but it seems like perhaps we're in a space where it's not quite as, it's not the deal it was before. You talk to people back in the 90s, these folks who were like graduate students or community members who presented our conferences about their experiences, and these folks seemed like, seriously, I don't want to use the word trauma because it gets overused, but they seem a little traumatized. I think now as we grow older, like as we move into the future, people like myself or my son aren't having to worry about so much about feeling excluded from a social. So really bad. So anyway, thank you so much for your time. It's wonderful to be back. I definitely could just keep blabbing, but I'm not going to do that because we have
Hi everyone, can you guys hear me? Yeah. Awesome. My name is Haley. I'm a representative from the NSU